delighted to welcome my guest today, who is Kapila Pandak, who has the regional responsibility for the Middle East for our partnership charity, Warchild. Welcome, Kapila. How are you?
Thank you, Hugo. I'm doing well. I'm excited to be here today. It's been a long time coming, so I'm excited.
Perfect. So the plan is today is what we're lucky enough to have a partnership with Warchild, who are our charity of choice for this year. Essentially at Tuckerstone, this is very important to us as a team, and we decided at the end of last year that we'd like to work in particular with one charity. And I did some calculations today, and between us at Tuckerstone, we have 18 children. So this was a very important cause for all of us. And what we've decided to do, amongst spreading the word, which is part of this video, is we aim to give a contribution to Warchild every time we make a placement. So the idea is that a proportion of fees from our clients will go to this good cause. And also I'm hoping the candidates should feel good, extra special about starting their new role. So that's how we've started a partnership with Warchild. What Kapila and I would like to do today is hopefully tell you all a bit more about the organisation and the good work that it does. As I said, Kapila has HR responsibility, particularly for the Middle East. So I'm keen to find out a bit more about what that entails. And we'll go from there. So Kapila, over to you now. So why don't you, if you could, explain to us a bit more about Warchild and how it's structured and the kind of work that you do around the world?
Sure, great. Yeah, firstly, I just want to say how excited Warchild we are with the partnership with you. It's such a pleasure, and I'm so excited for this new journey between our organization. In terms of what Warchild does, we are basically a child rights organization. We operate in 14 countries across Asia, Middle East, Africa, and South America. The areas that we focus are really on child protection, education, psychosocial support, and also advocacy for the rights of children who are living in conflict zone areas. So just to give you an example of some of the ways we support the children, of course, we work with partners and communities, so it's really a joint partnership. For example, in terms of psychosocial support, of course, following, when children are growing up in a conflict zone, they suffer from really negative mental health. So with our psychosocial support, it gives them a platform to really process those emotions, feelings of fear, how to really cope with distress. And that's our psychosocial programmings are integrated with education as well. So there is a more holistic approach to our work. The other element, the education. Often when you are living in conflict areas, you do not have access to school because the schools are not around. There are no teachers around. So with education, what we do is we provide, basic numeracy skills, literacy skills, even if it's through a tablet learning that's in line with the national curriculum, or even catch up for education for those who do not have access to formal education. So these are some of the things that we work with partners and communities and families to better support the children in our countries. That's sort of overall of a nutshell on how I would explain our work.
Okay, and can you give me an idea of the countries that you're in then?
So we are in 14 countries. For example, in the Middle East region, such as we are in Afghanistan, Iraq, Yemen, occupied Palestinian territories, Jordan, and Lebanon.
Okay.
And we have a few countries in Africa, but also in South America.
Okay, and so then from an HR perspective, can you give me an idea of scale? So how you said you worked in partnerships. What kind of size of employee population does Warchild have? And are those freelance contract workers or permanent staff? I'm just interested.
So majority of our staff directly from Warchild are our staff contracted by us. So they are globally around 800 staff globally. Okay. We do, in terms of sustainability of our program, we do work with partners whereby they do direct implementation of our work as well. So there is a bit of a mixture, but we do have about 800 staff directly contracted by us worldwide.
Okay, so obviously the Tuckerstone community are predominantly associated with HR. So, and I imagine HR within an organisation like Warchild is quite specific to your mission. Can you give us an idea of what HR means to Warchild, what your responsibilities are?
Sure. So my role is the regional HR advisor supporting 7 of the countries in the Middle East region. In terms of how the HR, more specific to my responsibilities, how it works is I really support the country HR from where I sit in London in really achieving, also guiding and supporting with our global HR projects, but also with your country HR annual plans. So that could be things like, well-being, diversity and inclusion, having HR systems in place, etc. So my role is really around strategically guiding, influencing, supporting colleagues on a strategic manner. In terms of how country HR operates, our approach is they are responsible for their own countries as they are best placed to advise on local context, cultural context, as well as local labor law. So they deal with they lead on all the activities, implement from project works to the day-to-day operational as well.
And what kind of what's the core activity of your employees on the ground, in those types of conflict zones? So what kind of people do you employ?
It's varied, actually. It's very mixture. So you do have, I guess, some roles that you would easily recognize, which are office-based. So these could be, for example, your teams like your HR team, finances team, teams who looks after the procurement side of things, but also your management, such as your country directors who ultimately lead the country programs. You also have what we call them program technical experts. So these are people like, for example, child protection advisor, MHPSS, so psychosocial health advisor. So these are very technical experts who would really guide those who directly implement the programs in terms of quality and compliance to international standards as well. And then we have the other group of people who will actually implement the projects on the ground. So your project-related staff. So these could be your project officers, project managers. And then we have actually really valuable staff who actually implement the programs on the ground. So these could be facilitators who would run education programs, which I mentioned earlier, with the children, with the communities as well. You will have psychosocial advisors as well, who will do assessment of the children and then provide needed service accordingly as well. So yeah, we have various groups of people.
So very diverse from a kind of professional perspective. And what the other thing that occurred to me is these appalling conflicts are very difficult to predict. So how do you mobilize a project team or a workforce at such short notice? Because presumably something it literally explodes and then you need to get in there on the ground. So how does that HR facilitate that?
So I think that's why it's very important for us to have local HR or local country offices really leading this, because they have the contacts there. They have the relationship with the authorities or even communities, especially in rural areas where you need acceptance from the local community. So what we do is we definitely, that's why, HR activities led by countries are so important to us. We also, of course, work with partners, local authorities as well. That really helps us get acceptance of our projects within countries as well. So through them as well, we are able to really tap into their networks to get the right candidate who obviously goes through a competitive process. And of course, once we settle in, once we've sort of, built that trust and that credibility there, then we can slowly build on as we, as the project goes along.
Understood. Okay, the other thing I wanted to ask was maybe because obviously your role is more around HR projects than maybe on the ground support, which I understand. Yes. Is perhaps to ask you a couple of examples of kind of group-wide projects, because I imagine, given the different countries, geographies and cultures that we're dealing with, for example, diversity and inclusion must be very complex. So perhaps you could give me an example of a project around D&I that you've done recently.
Sure. D&I has been quite a big forefront on our agenda across the organization. And also in the sector, the humanitarian aid sector. So one of the things we've really engaged on the past few years is really examine ourselves in terms of, localization and the decolonization. How can we fundamentally shift power from the global north to the global south? So one of the activities as an organization we've really gone into is moving changing really our governance and our structure. One of the elements, for example, is moving from a more, UK HQ-based structure, so from Amsterdam or London, to more a regional structure. So the offices in the region provide more better contextualized support for these countries, which is really exciting, which has actually come in effect this year, January 2024. So that's really exciting for us. So in terms of our HR has helped with that is we've really put in place, where appropriate, multi-locational policies, whereby we could hire people from anywhere from where Warchild has a presence within the region. And what that has made us built in, we're now open to more wider pool of candidates. Otherwise, these roles would be predominantly occupied by somebody in Europe, for example. Yeah. So that's really been exciting exercise we've sort of gone on as an organization this year with HR's support as well. So some of the other HR projects across the all country offices we've currently undergoing are how can we contextualize the D&I. So maybe from a Western perspective, the race is maybe more important, sure. Quite higher priority, whereas, for example, in some of the countries that we work in, race isn't a bigger of a priority. So what more priority could be gender, gender balance, because some of the countries we work in where we do not have such great gender balance as we would like to, or the religion or the sect, is more important. So we really contextualize it to each country's, each country's basically needs and wants. So that's one example.
I understand. So you have more, by regionalizing the business, you almost have more control locally, which means you can make it more bespoke to that particular country with their particular needs within a D&I context. Yeah, that makes sense. Highly complex and highly fascinating, I think. So listen, I know time flies, but and I've really enjoyed our conversation. I certainly would like to say to everyone, obviously we're super proud of our partnership with Warchild, and we're very grateful for all the work that Warchild do. And so we'd love to spread the word, and please do visit Warchild's website to learn more about the work and donate if you can. But thank you, Kapila, for your time today. And I wish you all the best and to carry on with the great work you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.